Anna, it's great to see you again. I'm Lindsey. This is Anna, and we're Conscious Epigenetics.
Welcome to another YouTube video. What are we talking about today, Lindsey?
This is a great subject, Anna, because the title is 15 minutes to performing better under stress.
Nice.
I'm looking a little bit pink in the cheeks because I'm feeling a bit stressed. So it's a perfect time to talk about how you perform well when you're feeling a little bit like you might be having a bit of stress and anxiety, or a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. So shall we jump straight in?
Let's do it. I love it. I think we have lots of experience in our own life of performing optimally, having to perform optimally, having to pull it out of the bag, sometimes prepared, sometimes not prepared, sometimes super duper prepared, and sometimes it just came out of nowhere. And I think it will be wonderful to link skill and knowledge and experience in this 15-minute YouTube.
So I think it's important to say that we don't recommend to our clients that they suffer under stress and anxiety. But the reality of life is that things happen that are stressful and make you anxious.
Yes.
And I have had multiple things like that happen in the last day for various reasons. So my question to us today is, what are the three things we advise people to do when they still need to perform but are suffering from stress and anxiety?
I think step number one is owning up to it and being aware that this is what's going on, because you can spend the entire time fighting it, or you can go, okay, this is how it is now. Now, how am I going to react to it? When you say, okay, so this is how it is, let me decide how I wish to respond to this, you already take control, you take your personal agency and you use it. And so for me, step one is to be aware and to take ownership. And what's really important there is, one of the most important things to remember for everybody needing to perform for exams, for for a big job interview or whatever, or just small life things like getting something ready for a client. There is nothing wrong with you. You are absolutely fine if there are moments in your life that are stressful. You cannot get around those. It is normal. You are absolutely fine. I'm working with musicians who are in their bachelor degree, who are doing their performance to get into their master degree in foreign countries. That's a big deal. And I work with them to get them ready, to prepare them in all the different ways in which we do that, from how to train and prepare, how to keep your mind in the right place. But it's important to go, it is a stressful thing. Oh, okay, so that means I'm allowed to be nervous. Yes, that means you're allowed to be nervous. And then to go, okay, so instead of trying and thinking I should have no stress or worries, you go, okay, so this is something that's stressful. Now, how do I go about it? And taking the ownership over the situation, saying it is like that, and then moving forwards, because then you do things together with yourself. You say, we are buddies, we're going to, whatever we is, whatever parts of you we're talking about, we are going to do this together. Let's find the best way to do it. Instead of you trying to fight the situation and trying to pretend it's not stressful, or trying to fight it to make it not stressful. It is stressful, it's going to be stressful. If you're doing GCSEs or final exams for your degree, or you're doing your first operation as a surgeon where you have the lead, it doesn't matter what it is. You just need to go, okay, this is stressful now. What is my approach? What do you think about that as a first step?
I totally agree with you. I think acknowledging anything is part of the battle, and we can talk about reduced galvanic skin response when people speak out their fears and emotions. Again, we've already talked about that before, but sweat monitors in people suffering from fear responses, the fear was reduced when people spoke out the fact that they were afraid.
Yeah.
And our bodies hear us, our nervous system reacts and goes, oh, okay, it's not death defying. I can do something about this.
Yeah.
We work with a variety of people that are performing. So I have a lot of athletes that I work with. students as well. You've got some really beautiful music students at the moment. I've also got some parents, and I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with somebody that they were saying, this is very stressful. I said, it's bound to be.
It's meant to. It can only but be stressful.
Yeah, and you are performing well as a parent under stress. Oh, this is normal. Oh, you're halfway there. I have got my final exams. Yes, this will be stressful. How do I prepare for that? So
Yes.
Just by acknowledging it, it's emotional granularity. How do I feel? I feel stressed, anxious, worried, etc. Half the battle. You've named it, you've tamed it, and you've actually managed to put your finger on it.
Yeah, it's realizing it's chaos control and minimizing, there's better words for this, but chaos control and minimizing damage. It's that strategy. When you are needing to perform and it's going to be stressful, that is your tactic and your strategy. It's not be perfect. It's not deleting anxiety or stress altogether. So we're not trying to have it completely gone. We're focusing on chaos control. What can we do? How can we limit the damage? How can we make sure that we get through this? One of my points I'd love to make, which then also comes to focus and routines, is there's this beautiful story of a Dutch guy who's rowed across the Atlantic twice, who sailed across the world 3 times. He's called Mark Slatson. I just think he's amazing, and his stories are amazing. And he says, when he went and did this in his worst times, he said, you just need to have a little routine that you keep doing. That's something for later. But the visual that he talks about him being on a sailing boat going around the world and having some massive storm. I loved the theory of like, tighten your harness, tie onto the boat. Your only and most important goal is to stay on that boat and be on that boat when the storm finishes. And so I think for students, that's the same. Tighten your harness, do all the things, make all your prep, go and do your exam, and just know that it's going to be stressful. It's going to be a storm, but you just need to make sure that you're still on that boat when the storm finishes.
And I see the same with corporate conflict. People are dealing with perhaps really difficult times at work, or they're coming to year end, or there's some big negotiation to do, or there's perhaps some grievance issue they're dealing with. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yes.
But you will, it's never winter twice. It will pass. Anna, I think it's important. I just Googled, we are using the words stress and anxiety slightly interchangeably. I just wanted to be clear that stress is obviously mental and physical symptoms, irritability, etc. Anxiety is the persistent existence of excessive worries.
Which means it shows you are unable to cope appropriately. And you fall off the boat. Anxiety is falling off the boat, I think.
I think, though, when I ask most people, is this a persistent worry? 9 times out of 10, they say yes. I don't want to start getting into the DSM definitions, but I think you can say, if somebody says this is a persistent worry, then it is anxiety that you're suffering from.
Yes.
And one of the most helpful things I find...
It's important to differentiate, I think, for what we are talking about here. We're talking about performing well under difficult circumstances. We're not talking about performing well during war. We are not talking about training SAS people or Navy SEALs. We're also not talking about how to continue to function when you've got PTSD. That's a different ballgame. We're talking about the mid-range here. We're talking about you are getting ready for something that's important, like my dance performances, like you're training for a physical test, for making the team, for getting into the next master's degree that you want to, writing an essay, things like that. So
it's just worth mentioning, I was out on my bike today and it was 4 degrees. There was quite a lot of stress about that because it was the first ride of the season. Am I anxious? Am I persistently worrying about this? Not yet, but you slide from worry into anxiety quite quickly sometimes. So we just need to be mindful of that.
Does that mean we can talk about number 2 and a narrow tunnel? Because I feel the narrow tunnel is maybe very much a nice visual for our point number 2. This video has 3 main points. So point number 2 is coming right up.
Yes, go ahead. You have my permission.
Consent is a rather important thing. So,
oh, that's for another video.
But yes, point number 2, also stress and performance related, but slightly differently. So point number 2 is focus. Step 1 is own up to it, be aware of it, decide you realize it, you see it, name it. Point number 2 is focus. And my favorite way of talking about that, this is what sport and exercise psychologists teach their athletes. This is what performance psychologists teach in corporate worlds. You and I have done both and still do both. We also do that in music. So we have a wide range of clients and ways in which we've been working with this. Step number 2, focus, to me is people need to learn, because this is a skill you need to train, like catching a ball and throwing a ball. It's a skill. You need to learn to create a very narrow tunnel for yourself. The reason why a horse has blinders on is because it can only see a limited amount of stuff, which means it can only focus on a limited amount of stuff. And so a narrow tunnel is something you and I talk about very often, and it's being able to realize when you're veering off course and grabbing yourself by your shirt, your pants, your hair, I don't care what it is, but you have to be very clear on what you want. Do you want this exam? Yes. Do you want it to go well? Yes. Okay, what does that ask of me? Okay, are you ready to go and do that? Maybe not, but do you have to do it right now? Yes. Okay, great. And so the narrow tunnel is like making yourself walk in a very narrow way and not giving yourself any other options. The more often you train this, the better you get. So in the story of Mark Slats on the ocean in a rowing boat or on a sailing boat, he has no other option but to keep his mind and himself together and to do what he can do until it becomes too much. But until then, he just does little steps, keeps a narrow focus, and he just goes through the motions and sticks with routines like this. So that's my way of explaining, I think, our step 2 and focus. How would you go at it?
I totally agree. I think we lose the vision and we lose we lose what we're actually gaining for. And anybody that understands when you say the gate is narrow, it's very easy to miss it. The gate's narrow, you're aiming for it, you need to keep yourself on course. We also often say, one step at a time. If you've ever been through a 12-step program or you're in any sort of spiritual discipline, one day at a time, one step at a time, a lamp for your feet. You just keep taking the steps. What's the goal today? What's the goal tomorrow? We tend to rush. We look far too far ahead. We don't have a lamp that shines that far. We tend to try and predict the future, and we lose our focus. I often hear people moaning about things. If you are in your final year at university, you are going to have to do the exams. If you are training for something, you have made a decision to train for it. There are some sort of finite situations here that you're focusing on as a goal. If you're in a job that's just terribly stressful and you're not sure why you're there, it's a different conversation. But what is it you're doing? What's your focus? Great, off you go. And you and I are very good at doing that to each other. What are we focusing on here? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds a bit harsh sometimes when we interrupt each other and say, why are you talking about that? Because that's not what we're focusing on. Oh, yeah, right, back again.
Yeah.
But the gate's narrow, and if you miss it, you're running up against the fence all the time.
Yeah. And you don't get anything done that you want. I think a really nice example is called water dipping, because we both love that and we have done lots of that together in the mountains, in the winter, in the freezing cold. You are currently still doing that. I'm in Portugal, so the water here is a bit warmer. But when you go and dip in water that's below 5 degrees, it's incredibly offensive. And it makes all of your body think it's coming out to get you and you might not come out alive. So that's a rather stressful situation you purposely put yourself into. It is different if you are studying, but you chose to do that degree. You chose to keep going, and you chose to go and get ready for your final exams, if that is what you're doing. You chose all of that. You chose that in the last 10 years, every day, a little bit. And so one of the things I love when I've been dipping, because I've also dipped in very cold water by myself often, the thing I do, my little mantra when I go in and have to go and do it, is I remind myself, and this is where I find strength every time. I remind myself, I go in and I said, I want this. I chose this, I want this. I want this. This is what I chose and I want this. Do I want to go in the water? Well, I have to remind myself that I want this because it's also terrible. So the moment I remind myself, and this is the narrow tunnel and the focus also, when you go and get ready, however scared you are, whatever is going on in your head, where you find your strength and where you get a laser beam focus again is where you go, I want this. I choose this and I want this. No matter how hard it is, no matter how this ride goes, I have chosen it. I've chosen it for X amount of years and I'm choosing it right now and I'm doing it. And I think every time people bring themselves back to that level of personal agency, you get a lot of energy and you get a lot of motivation, but you bring yourself to remembering what you're doing this for, even though it's hard and even though it can be incredibly offensive, like cold water dipping. But the water is less cold when I go in, and it's less terrible when I go in and I'm like, I choose this, I want this, I'm doing this because it's my decision.
I agree. You've chosen it. And we're over time. The third thing we said we'd talk about is being present. The biggest, energetically, the most unhelpful thing you can do is accelerate yourself into the future because it hasn't happened yet, or drag yourself back into the past because it's a historic recollection of your own thoughts and experiences. Being present, being grounded, focusing on today, one day at a time, is absolutely essential when performing under stress.
So what's your number one tip to help people in that moment to bring themselves back and stick themselves in their body? What's your best tip?
What I advise is that people are really fully present, focused attention on what it is they're doing. So if you're going out for dinner, but you feel like you should be studying, or you're going out for dinner, but you feel like you've got a presentation for work, go out for dinner, focus on going out for dinner, come back. Don't go out for dinner and think I should be doing something else. Don't go for a run. Pardon?
You pick your thing you're doing with that time.
It's incredibly unhelpful, especially if you're 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 3 months out from whatever this thing is that's causing this stress, to be constantly thinking about it. Today, I am spending the morning doing this, fully focus on what you're doing. Then come back to it, fully focus on what you're doing for the afternoon, fully focus on what you're doing for the evening. Don't constantly be, it's like having the phone turned on trickle charge. That will accelerate you in past stress into anxiety. Focus on what you're doing now, get it done, do the next thing, and make sure you build in balance. I
think my best trick when I'm finding that really hard to do, to be present, like you said, is to name one of the psychological tricks or exercises is to name what you see. This is my, like in your food example, this is my fork. This is the restaurant I choose. This is my fork. I have tuna steak on my plate. I'm sticking in your head. You don't have to say anything out loud, but you go, I'm sticking my tuna. I'm sticking my fork in my tuna. I'm putting it in my mouth. That means all of your capacity to be focusing on something has to be focused on what you see and what you are doing. So naming and saying in your head or out loud what you see and what you are doing is very helpful, because that brings at least 70% of your brain capacity of actions. It brings it into one thing. So with dipping, it is, I'm walking into, I see the horizon. There is a blue sky, feet are on the sand. I'm about to walk into the ocean. I can tell that I'm breathing. Like you talk yourself through it. And I think in very stressful moments when you have lost it and you have no idea how to bring yourself back, because that is also something can happen. Like you're about to walk into the big exam you've been studying for or whatever. That's the moment where you can go, I can feel my feet on the floor. I'm walking into my exam room. You know, this is the moment where I make things come out. This is my pencil. This is my bag. I'm sitting down. This is my piece of paper. I'm writing, I'm thinking, I'm breathing, you know, and then it kind of like, when you've lost it, because the narrow focus can go to like, you know, to like complete overwhelm in seconds. When you're here thinking you're drowning and your focus is everywhere, to bring it back in again, you name your things that you're seeing, that you're doing. And I think that's my favorite trick too.
And I think we are massive fans of mindfulness, sophrology, psychology, breath work, all of these things, visualization, they are absolutely fabulous tools. We're not going to talk about that now. So Anna, well done.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yes. One thing I would love to add is if people are listening to this and they are in a situation where they are having to perform in challenging circumstances because of life or because they are studying, they're preparing for something that's important, job related, whatever it is, music related, we would love to talk to you. Underneath our video, you will find how to sign up for a 30-minute free call with us, where we would discuss what's going on in your life and how we can help you. You can sign yourself up. The time slots are available. You just put your email address in. So if this is something that's going on in your life and you could do with more help, then we would love to help and sign up for a 30-minute free call.
Well done. Gorgeous to see you as always.